and welcome to JavaScript Evangelist. In the last video, we learned how to load next and previous page for our blog posts. In this video, we'll learn how to display a user profile along with the blog post made by that user and the pagination for the posts on the user profile page. To display blog post for a specific user, we'll need to modify our database. We'll add a new node called post per user, which will help us find blog post keys made by that user. So post per user, this node we are going to add, and which will have each user and its blog post as keys. We will denormalize our database, that is, make it shallow. Do not have deep nesting of nodes. If a database is not shallow, it means let's say for example we have 3 users and all of these blog posts will be inside each of these users. That means it is not shallow. Also, if you have any SQL knowledge, throw that away. It's not very useful in Firebase. There are many right ways to model your data, as well there are many wrong ways to do the same. The current database we have, it's not completely bad, but it's not completely shallow, but have few limitations. Alright, let's get started by deleting this node, and I'm going to delete everything basically, and I'm going to populate the same database again, but with the post per user node. We are doing this since we need the association key of each blog post and push the same key corresponding to the key of the user into the post per user node. Alright, going back to the code. So this is our JSON data. Users node has 3 users, then post node has a lot of posts, and each post denotes that which user created it. So this is the username from the users. So this was our previous script, and you can also watch the same in the previous video. I have copied the script and created a new script called Populate shallow DB. Also, I have added a script under package.json shallow DB under the scripts, which runs this TypeScript file under TypeScript node. The Populate shallow DB TypeScript file loops through all the users from the JSON file, JSON data users. Also, we have reference to the database, posts, and the users. So when you are inside the loop of users, this is an entire for loop. It runs for a single user. So we are pushing the single user to the database, as well having a reference to the key of the user that we are currently pushing. Then I'm creating an empty array of the post keys made by that user, and I'm looping inside users loop. I'm again looping posts loop, and I'm pushing the post only if I'm pushing the post to the posts reference only if the current user post.user is equal to user.username. And also I'm having the $key of the current post that I'm pushing, and I'm pushing this key to the empty array post key. Once I'm done with this loop, I'm going to the next script where I've written an association reference. So this is the same, basically this is just a reference to the post per user, and post per user I'm creating an association. Basically each post key by this user, I'm pushing this key to the user reference as a child key. You can see it over here. Once I'm populating this data, okay, alright, once this loop is done, I'm going to the next user and doing the same thing again. So going to this node now, I'll just populate, I'll just run the script now, npm run shallow DB, which I got it from here. Basically I'm just running this Once triggered, you can see on the left hand side in the Firebase, the database will start to trigger. And once everything is done, once all the yellow colors are gone, just hit Ctrl C inside your terminal. Alright, you can see we have created a new node over here, post by user. So it has users key, which you can see it over here. This key and this key is matching same. And inside each user key, we have all the blog posts, but as a keys. So these blog posts are made by this user, and this blog post keys are made by this user. Alright, so going back to the code. So going back to the post service, all it does is it gets all the blog posts, but we are also passing a limit in the posts container component TypeScript file. So ng on init, get all the posts, but limit it by the limit. Also, we have another function which takes the start at key of the last blog post and gets all the blog post, but again passing the limit of 5. Actually, there should be limit. Never mind. So this is the current post container. What I'm going to do is, over here, once you click on this user, I need to load that user along with its blog post. But for now, let's just load the user by username. So I need to create a route as well as a component. So I'm going to create a route over here called user/the user. For that, first of all, we'll need to generate a user profile component, which I'm going to type it through the command line. G for generate, C for component, user profile. And you can see user profile folder has been created. So this is the user profile, and I need to load this user profile on a specific route. So go to the app routes file. Over here, I'm just going to duplicate this, so it's almost identical. So what I need is basically load the users. So users/username. This is the path which I'm targeting. So username, I don't need this path as of now, and I'm going to load user profile component on a username. So let's see how it looks. And if I go to this URL, you can see user profile works. Alright, open up user profile component. And what I need over here is I need to load the user by username. So go back to your post service, and I need to add a new function or the new public API or the method for this post service called find user by username. Find user by username, which I'm going to pass a username over here, which is going to be a type of string, which returns me an observable of type user. I had already gone ahead and created this user model, which is almost identical to the post model which we had created in the past. So I'm going to return a user. To do that, I'll need to query to the entire database of users. So I'm going to list all the users and filter them out by the key or the username. In this case, I'm going to filter the user by username. So return this.af. In our case, AF is Angular 5 database. af.list. And I need to load all the users. But I'm going to pass a query over here. The query is, first of all, I'm going to order by child username, and I'm going to match. So I'm going to load all the users, then I'm going to order them by username, and I need only user, which is equal to the username, which we pass over here. Once I get the list of users, and even though you get a single user, you get an array. So I'm going to map that array to the user model. So user dot from array, and we need the result. You can also do a console log over here with the do operator. Alright, so let's utilize this public API or the method into user profile. When the page loads, I'm going to read this username over here from the route, but for now let's just load a static user. So in our case, I'm just going to create a constant. Username is equal to SteelX, right? And I'm going to make a call to the service, post service as post service. So this dot post service dot find user by username, and I'm going to pass the username over here. We can also define this as a private variable over here afterwards. So this call returns me an observable. So of course you need to subscribe to it or either use an observable variable. So I'm going to create an observable over here that is going to be a variable user observable, and which is going to be in type of observable of type user. This dot user is equal to, which makes a call to this find user by username, which returns it an observable. So we can load this user with the async pipe, and also going to use the JSON pipe just to display data as a JSON over here. Let's see how it looks. So first we get null, and after a while we get the user. Okay, we are going to handle this properly. Let's just load the HTML. So load this user in a proper way, display this user in a proper way. I'm just going to add a proper HTML over here now. So this is the HTML. I'm inside user profile component HTML. So we are loading the user as an async. So I'm going to use ngIf, and in Angular 4 you have an pipe which helps you load async operators as async. So I'm loading user observable with the help of async pipe as user, which I'm using it over here. If user is not available, I'm creating a new variable called user loading, which will help us add the loading state. So if user loading, we will display this, and let's see how it looks. Fetching user, and you get the user. Let's just load this username from the route. Currently we are loading an hard-coded user. I'm going to load a service over here called route as activated route. Activated route is again an observable based service. You need to subscribe to it. So to get a username, we have to do something like this. This dot route dot params, which is an observable, so we have to subscribe to it. Then once we are over here, we get a param, and we get something like this. So this dot username equals to params, which is an array, and username. So once we have the username, we can make this call over here. But this is a very bad type of code. So we are subscribing here again, then we are subscribing here again. Rather than doing all this, we can just simply load this over here like this and return this post service. But instead of subscribing over here, we can use switch map. Switch map carries forward the value of the observable returned to the next subscription. We have learned about switch map in the previous video. So we have to subscribe to this only once. And I'm just going to pass this username over here. And let's see how it works. Alright. We are fetching this perfectly. If I change this username to something else, we get that specific user. Alright, so we are loading the user profile with the route params. Now what we need to do is we need to load the blog post of that specific user. To do that, we have to update our post service. We are going to start over here by finding the blog post keys of that user. So going back to the database, basically we need this user key, which we already have now. We have the user and we have its key. Once we have the user's key, we can make a call to the post by user node. Then once we are inside this, we can load all these keys, and we can maybe limit the query also over here. So let's just do that. Alright, let's load the blog post keys per user. So find post keys per user, and username is going to be a string. So we'll pass a query object over here now, which is going to be Firebase list factory options. Just take this to the new line, and I'm going to return an observable of strings. So we are going to return a lot of keys as a string inside an array. So first of all, to get a key of a user, to get a key of this user, we have to have a user first. So we can find a user by username. This dot find user by username and pass this username. Once we have the user, we can use the switch map operator to make another call. We get the user. So since we have the user's key, this dot af dot list. So basically what I'm trying to do over here is I'm getting post per user reference followed by that dollar key, which we get something like this, whatever the user's key. So user dot dollar key. By the way, this is ES6 template strings. So what I mean by this path over here is we are basically going inside this key and we are fetching, we are listing all the keys, we are getting all the data, but we have to limit this data. That's why we have this query object, and we are going to just pass it over here. Once we have the keys, the blog post keys of the desired user, we have to map only the keys inside those blog posts. So we can map post keys per user, which is an array now. We have to map this array with the actual array map. So this map is operator map, RxJS operator map, and this map is used on the array. So we get post, single post, and we just need the key of each post. And we are returning a list of array string as an observable. So once we have this blog post keys, it's time to actually find the actual blog post for those keys. So going back to the database, Now we have all these keys, but the keys doesn't have any data. So we have to find a specific key and the entire blog post for that key. All right, let's write a function for that. The public API name is going to be find post for post keys. So we have to pass post keys which we get from the previous method. So post keys are going to be an observable, so which is same as this one, and we are going to return actual blog post now as an observable. So this observable is going to be a type of post. So once we have the post keys, I'll just name this as post keys. Once we have this post keys as an observable, we have to map over them. So once we are inside the post keys map, we have the post keys as an array, and for each post key we are going to get the individual blog post. So post keys dot map, this is the array method. So we get a single key, that is the post key, or you could just say we get a key over here as a string. So we are going to get an each individual blog post. We already have that method over here, find post by key, and I'm going to just utilize that. This dot find post by key, and we pass the key which we receive over here. This is an individual observable. So this observable, we have to combine all these observables now. All right, go to the next line, and we are going to use something called flat map to combine those observables. Again, flat map is an operator for RxJS, so we have to load it in main.ts file. Flat map is not available to you directly, so flat map is available under merge map, and merge map also loads flat map. Go back to the post service. Flat map returns us, and so once we get the Firebase observable, so this is for each observable which we receive, we are going to combine those observables into one. So combine latest, and we get the Firebase observable, and we are combining this each individual blog post into one observable. So combine latest is available to us under RxJS under the observables. All right, so now we have the blog posts for the keys. Rather than making two different functions, we can write a one combined function which makes call to the both methods. So I'm going to write a new method over here called get post by username. So we supply a username over here as a string, and we can pass a query over here again, or maybe for now let's just pass a limit equals to 5. So the first constant which I'm going to write over here is the blog post keys. So first of all, we need the keys of this specific user. So we have to find post keys per user. So I'll name it as first page post keys, which is an observable. This dot find post keys per user. So we pass this username over here, and the limit. limit to first limit. Once we have the blog post keys, all we have to do is load the actual blog post. So we are returning this dot find blog post keys, and we have to pass this post keys as an observable over here. And that's it. In today's video, we learned what is a shallow DB. Also, we learned how to populate the shallow DB, and we created this post service TypeScript file which takes care of making calls and get the blog post keys, get the blog post for the keys, and the actual call to get the blog post by the username. We are going to utilize this method inside our user profile, but in the next video. So stay tuned, and thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. It really motivates me to keep on adding new videos for you. Thank you.